Greetings, beloved Princeton United Methodist Church community. It's Pastor Jenny here, and I'm reading today from Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, to the end of the age. This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. So this passage is often known as the Great Commission. It comes at the very end of the book of Matthew, and it's Jesus' last commissioning those disciples to go out and to share all that Jesus had done with them. And one of the things that I think is so challenging about this passage is that we are used to hearing it as the Great Commission, and we have seen it in action in many ways in our world. And but I think it talks about one thing that is so crucial that has been missed often by people trying to obey this commandment. Sometimes it is hard to balance both the doing of the commandment that God has, the call that God has on our lives. We saw this last week with Jonah as well. It's hard to balance this call, this thing that God has asked us, the doing of that thing with all that is entailed with that thing, all that is meant by that thing. So like with Jonah last week, we saw somebody who was kind of following the letter of what God asked Jonah to do, at least at the end of the story. Jonah technically does what God asks, but he's not happy about it. He's grumpy about it. He's angry about it. And he does it to about the lowest degree possible. What's the minimum I can do to kind of get this thing done? And in this passage, we see it in that people have done this thing, right? They've gone out and baptized and just recruited people for Jesus. But the thing that I think is missing in both of these stories, that is implied in both of these stories, is a relationship. Is that, when Jesus calls the disciples, invites them to go out and to share all that he has done, all that he has shared with them, that's not something we can do in one conversation or in a day or an hour or even a week at camp together. These are not things that we do quickly or in relationships that aren't really relationships. These are things that require time. These are things that require connection and trust and spending time together, telling stories together, observing and learning and reflecting together. Jesus spent so much time with those disciples. Jesus traveled and talked and taught and prayed with and ate with and celebrated with and cried with and so many things with those disciples. It's impossible to imagine how much Jesus actually taught them and how much that just changed everything about their lives. So the aim here, as we talk about evangelism, as we continue to talk about evangelism, this go tell it on the mountain spirit of things, is not just to go out and baptize. And it's tricky too. In our church, we have to report the number of baptisms that we have each year. But we can't just go round people up to baptize, right? We can't just do that and call it done. Baptism and everything else about the life of faith comes through relationships, comes through connection, communication, sharing vulnerably, sharing authentically, sharing the hard things and the easy things and the day-to-day things and the simple things and the complex things, the questions, the doubts, all of the things. And so I do invite you to continue on with this journey, wrestling with this very thing we call evangelism, but also to continue with these little, these invitations. Some are about reflecting and journaling. If you're not a journaling person, do not worry. Do not do it because it says journal. The idea, though, is that sometimes the thing that journaling does for us is it makes us stop and really think through things. And so you don't have to do that by writing it down. Maybe you do that through a conversation. Maybe you do that while you're walking, and that's the one thing you're thinking about while you're walking. But the invitation is, of course, to reflect and to codify some of those things, or to do it enough so that you're getting your thoughts, you're hearing what you have to say, or what the Spirit within you has to say, and letting that become more conscious and aware for yourself. And then there are other things on this list that are more about the relationships. The Reflect and Journal is, of course, about your relationship with yourself, your relationship with God, your relationship kind of in an internal way with church and faith. And then there are these other things that invite you to go and talk to other people, to listen, actually, more so than talk. But it's about listening. It's about hearing deeply what other people have to say. It is about inviting people into longer, deeper conversations. And sometimes those conversations have less to do with words and more to do with how they experience you as a disciple of Jesus, your joy, your authenticity, your welcome spirit, welcome arms, your compassionate listening heart, your the way that you lift other people up and help them have space to grow spiritually, to nurture their spirit. These are the kinds of things that we're talking about when we talk about evangelism. And even as we say, go and make disciples, it's through relationships that we do that. So our youth are going to be talking about this more on Sunday. It is Youth Sunday, and Pastor Skitch will be at Princeton UMC on Sunday, along with our youth are leading the service. I will likely not be at PUMC for worship in the morning, as I will be at a program through our conference called Bridges, and learning through workshop style things more about how to bridge into our community from our church and going out into the world in some other ways, some additional ways to this very thing. So we'll be in some of the same spirit in different places. Pastor Taylor will be at Kingston UMC on Sunday, and it'll be a joyous day. Remember that there is a potluck after worship, and that is also our time to hear the youth choir sing and share in their musical review together then. Lots of other things are happening. The following Sunday, which is the 12th of May, that is Mother's Day. That is our children. Our children are leading worship that day, and they will be singing and sharing in their musical. It is the story of Daniel and the fiery furnace. And so we get to hear them lead us that day. Also on the 19th, May 19th, that is Pentecost. It is a grand celebration. It always is, but it is our confirmation day. We are having baptisms, and we are welcoming new members into our beloved community as well. Lots and lots of wonderful things going on. It's very exciting. Two other things I want to mention to you. One is that we do have every year for the past, 4 or 5 years, we've had a worship survey that goes out. Now, this is about planning for next year's worship series. And so the questions that we ask you are things like, what is on your mind? What comes up at dinner conversations or in conversations with your friends, your family? What's on your mind and on your heart? What are you talking about? What are you reading or watching, or what do you wish you were reading or watching or listening to? What are those things that are on the top of your mind? What are you curious about? What are you hungry for? There are also questions in there about giving you space to share what you want to read or to talk about in our worship series that come next year as well. So I'll commend that to you. We have that. It'll be open through the month of May. And so I would love to hear what you have to say about these things. Last thing that I want to talk to you about today is that General Conference has been happening this week and last week in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is about to wrap up, and I believe by the time you get this video, it will be in its last day. But there has been some really big shifts that have been happening there, and I think very hopeful things. There have been kind of 3 R's that have been on the hearts of many people, and this is part of how I've been praying for our delegates and people that have been doing very hard work over these past couple of weeks. But they are 3 R's. There's been remove some harmful language from the Book of Discipline, past regionalization, which divides up our church and it keeps us together, but also reorganizes us in some ways that give each part of the world some different authority to do what they need to do in their context, local context, and then ratification of new social principles. And all three of these things have, some of them still have some work to be done on them, but they've all moved forward toward this aim of passing all three of these R's. And one in particular, the remove language, I want to just share with you this announcement too. So without debate, this past Wednesday, at General Conference, the General Conference voted overwhelmingly to remove the United Methodist Church's ban on ordination of clergy who are, as the discipline has said previously, self-avowed practicing homosexuals. This has been a prohibition that's been there since 1984, and this has been such a place of hurt and harm and contention and pain in the life of our denomination for many years now. Delegates also voted that superintendents, including bishops, are not to penalize clergy or churches for performing or holding same-gender weddings at the churches or not holding them. So we are not compelled to do either thing, but we will not be penalized or punished for doing either of those things. So either holding weddings or not holding weddings. And so it gives us kind of a new freedom and a release from this difficult, painful, damaging, harmful language that has been with us for a long time. So I rejoice in these things, and I share them with you too. You can find all of this information on the General Conference website, which we're sharing with you as well, plus lots more. All you wanted to know about General Conference, you can see there too. So friends, it is always a joy to journey with you, and remember that we were created for joy, that we are enough because God is enough, and God has called us to be in relationship with God, in relationship with one another in ways that bring us all to life, to enjoy that fullness of life that we receive in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. We'll talk to you soon.